I grew up my Bible. The Bible is the best.
We're going to protect Christianity, and I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct.
The evangelicals are with me because they know one thing about me. I'm not a liar. I win with the evangelicals by a lot. They know I'm legit.
I wrote the Art of the Deal. I always say a deep, deep second to the Bible. The Bible is the best, the Bible.
Well, you just heard it from Donald Trump. Christians love him. And today, Trump held a meeting with hundreds of evangelical leaders. The goal, to address concerns about his candidacy. So, did it work? A special on-the-record evangelical panel of people in today's meeting is here. Reverend Franklin Graham, Ralph Reed, and Jerry Falwell Jr. all go on the record. And I should note, as of today, Ralph and Jerry are both on Trump's advisory board. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to all of you. Reverend, first to you. What happened today?
Well, Greta, I was asked to come to a meeting and to hear Donald Trump, and I'm glad I did. As you know, I'm not supporting or endorsing anyone this year. I'm going to all 50 state capitals to hold prayer rallies on Capitol steps, and that's what I'm doing, and I promise people that I won't get involved and endorse anyone. But I was invited to hear him, and I'm glad I did because I think he answered everyone's questions. There are people that had I think good concerns. When I say good, concerns, and they were honest concerns. And I think Donald Trump addressed most of those today.
Jerry, you were there as well. In fact, I think you're an early endorser of Donald Trump, if I'm correct. What did you think today?
I was very impressed. He was very presidential, and he's really showing a deeper understanding than I've ever seen before of issues that are important to conservatives and to Christians. He talked a lot about his Supreme Court nominees. He talked about how they're all going to be pro-life. He talked about support for the nation of Israel, and he was strong on that issue. That's something that was very important to the group in that room. He also talked about so many other issues that are so important to, he talked about religious freedom. That was the #1 concern, religious liberty, because the government now is impinging on the religious freedoms of people of faith, and those were the key issues. He went a lot longer than he promised the group he would go. I was very impressed, and I was honored to introduce him, and I tried to point out to the crowd that we have such a simple choice this election. We can vote for somebody who's promised to support and defend the values that are important to conservatives and Christians, and to appoint the right nominees to the Supreme Court, or we can vote for a candidate who has promised she will not do either of the above. She will do just the opposite. So it was. Go ahead.
Now, to go to you, Ralph. Ralph, did he say anything? Rather, did he say anything that would probably, let's say, annoy some evangelicals?
I don't think so, Greta. You know, as he himself said in the clip that you showed leading into this segment, you know, he's done extremely well among conservative evangelical voters in these just concluded primaries. He won, if you look at all the exit polls and the aggregate thereof in the 27 states for which we have them, he won 39% of the evangelical vote to Ted Cruz's 33% and Marco Rubio's 15%. And this was in a field of 17 people that included 2 sons of preachers, Ted Cruz and Scott Walker, a former preacher and successful governor, Mike Huckabee. This was a very strong and deep field, and I think he's connected with them, and I think there were 2 things that really jumped out to me today. I have a relationship with Donald Trump. We've been friends for 7 years. I like him. I consider him a friend. I was neutral in the primaries, but there were 2 things that I think really made a difference to these leaders today who still needed to hear some things and have some concerns addressed. The first was when he talked about ending the IRS's and the Internal Revenue Code's death penalty and strict prohibition on churches being involved in civic activities. Right now, if a church or Liberty University or a major ministry like Franklin's or somebody else's spends 1 dime making a statement in the civic arena, they can have their entire tax-exempt status revoked. Many major ministries have been subject to harassment by the IRS, to invasive audits, to ultimately harassment. And he said that he would repeal that prohibition and replace it with a standard that protected freedom of speech. I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing was he reiterated his commitment to appoint conservative, strict constructionist jurists to the U.S. Supreme Court. Greta, this is the first time in modern American history that we've gone into a presidential election with a vacancy on the Supreme Court, on a court that is divided and split right down the middle, 4 liberals and 4 conservatives. It isn't just the presidency on the line, it's the entire federal judiciary, and he's released a list of 11 names who are outstanding people who will decide everything that we care about, from life to religious freedom to Obamacare down the line. I think that's very important to conservative voters of faith.
All right, Reverend Franklin, you've gone, I've seen on your Facebook page all the pictures, because you've gone to a number of state capitals. You're going to hit all of them eventually before November. Do you get the sense, they're all coming out to pray, but do you get the sense that they are enthusiastic about the election, that they'll come out to vote? Because that's something different. They're
going to come out to vote, Greta. This is, they come out in the middle of the day. This is noon, and it's a work week, not a weekend where they can take off. This is a work day, and people come by the thousands, and they get there early, Greta. And I'm amazed. They're not coming there to hear me. They're not coming for entertainment. They're coming because they sense our nation is in trouble, and that the only hope is God. And I tell them that I have no faith in the Republican Party. I have no faith in the Democratic Party. My only hope for this country is God. And they get that, and they understand, and we pray, and we spend the first 10, 15 minutes, Greta, in prayer. That's what we do. And then I challenge people to get involved. I challenge them to vote, but I also challenge people to run. When I say run for office, I'm talking about at the local level. We need to get the mayors. We need to get the county commissioners. We need to get the city council. We need to get school boards. I want Christians to run for school boards. That is so important. If we could get the school boards, born-again evangelical Christians on those school boards, it can make a huge difference in this country for the next 20 years, Greta.
Well, I've certainly been watching the Facebook page that you have, and it certainly has been busy about that. Gentlemen, it's always nice to see you. We never have enough time, but I hope you all come back as we watch this election. Thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
Thank you, Greta.
Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The Clinton-Trump race intensifies. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Speaking in Ohio today, Hillary Clinton portrayed her opponent, Donald Trump, as a charlatan in business and perhaps even a crook.
He's been involved in more than 3,500 lawsuits in the last 30 years. And a large number were filed by ordinary Americans and small businesses that did work for Trump and never got paid. Painters, waiters, plumbers, people who needed the money and didn't get it. Not because he couldn't pay them, but because he could stiff them. My late father was a small businessman. If his customers had done what Trump did, my dad would never have made it. So I take this personally.
Strong words. Almost immediately, Mr. Trump responded on Instagram.
Hillary Clinton's only right about one thing. I understand debt and how to handle it. I've made a fortune with debt. But debt for this country is a disaster, and Obama has piled it on, and she's been there watching.
Now, we can expect stuff like this almost daily until November. Some of it will be headache-inducing. Tomorrow, Donald Trump makes a speech here in New York City, and you know he's going to hammer Mrs. Clinton on economics. Both candidates understand that right now the race is fairly close, and that has to worry Secretary Clinton. New CNN poll has Clinton ahead of Trump, 47-42 among registered voters. However, an Ohio Quinnipiac poll shows the race is tied, 40-40. Pennsylvania, it's just about tied as well, Clinton 42, Trump 41. In Florida, Clinton leads Trump, 47-39. Donald Trump needs to win all 3 of those states, and his polling has been going south for the last 3 weeks. But Trump remains very competitive in Pennsylvania, which has recently been a Democratic stronghold, so that's good news for him. And even though he's lost some ground in Florida, that state's fluid. Trump won big there in the Republican primary. So Hillary Clinton knows she has a lot of work to do to defeat Donald Trump, who has made major mistakes but still in the game. Talking Points believes that the conventions will not be very influential this year, meaning not a lot of minds going to be changed there. The big event will be the first presidential debate, September 26th in Dayton, Ohio. Whoever wins that debate, likely to be president, especially if they win it decisively. The other debates, not going to matter that much. Polls say about 22% of Americans have not yet made up their minds. That's a very low number this far away from Election Day. But that 22% will decide things. And that's a minute.
She said it again. Does your Attorney General think if she utters the word transparency over and over and over again that you'll buy it?
Be as transparent as possible and to provide as much information as possible. Over the course of time, we certainly are open to that.
Well, after that editing fiasco of yesterday, you still don't have all the transcripts because the Department of Justice is refusing to release the entire transcript of the Orlando shooter calling 911. There are at least 20 minutes that the DOJ will not let you see or hear. So what's up with that? And considering that in yesterday's released transcript, the DOJ swapped out the word Allah and replaced it with God, do you even believe that the transcript the DOJ did release is accurate? That is word for word from the audio. Or do you suspect some DOJ funny business? Well, this is certain. If we had that promised transparency, we could verify the transcripts on our own. On the Record Investigates tonight, starting with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta. How are you?
Good. Is this much ado about nothing, or are you as outraged over this transparency suggestion?
No, it is something that we should be concerned about because obviously we have an administration that wants to manipulate the truth and not allow the American people to understand the nature of the enemy that inspired the Islamic jihadist attack, the second largest Islamic terrorist attack in United States history. And why is it that they want to manipulate this language? Why is it that they want to redact this language? And why is it that they feel a need to, change the word Allah to God? It is unconscionable. It is something that no one should accept. And this is truly a violation of that First Amendment.
Well, this is what I don't understand is that why they're dodging on this one. You know, like, why don't they just say it what it is? I mean, if the killer himself says he's inspired by ISIS, al-Baghdadi, who's the leader of ISIS, is someone that he swears his allegiance to, why in the world does the Obama administration seem to sort of dodge and duck that as though they think we're so stupid that we don't know?
Well, you have an administration that continues to obfuscate, they continue to deny, they even continue to lie about the nature and the existence of this enemy because they want to feed us a narrative, as you saw the president, that they're having success against ISIS. Don't believe your lying eyes and what you see and what you know to be happening. Because if all of a sudden they would recognize this enemy, if all of a sudden they would try to understand Islamic fascism and Islamic jihadism, then they would be called to task to do something about it. But, you know, Greta, let's be very honest. Think about all of the jihadist attacks that have occurred in the Obama administration, and we continue to hear their response is that we need to disarm the American people.
Well, let me tell you what is happening now, the Colonel West. I mean, I'm obviously giving him a lot of heat for this. A lot of other people is the Obama administration is taking heat virtually from, many for not saying radical Islamic terror. And today, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest hit back at those critics, including me, I guess.
The individuals who spend most of their time talking about radical Islamic terrorism are individuals like Republicans in the Senate who voted against legislation that would prevent those individuals from being able to buy a gun. And those are individuals who have not actually put forward their own strategy for keeping the country safe. Using the term radical Islamic extremism is not a counterterrorism strategy. It is a political talking point, plain and simple.
Colonel, your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that young man needs to understand something about strategic decision-making, especially strategic military decision-making. We fought against Nazism, fascism, and Japanese imperialism. We fought against communism. You know, what Josh Earnest is saying is that basically he would have termed the attack on Pearl Harbor just an attack by airplanes. You have to understand the ideology of your enemy in order to be able to strategically undermine their messaging and undermine that ideology while you understand their goals and objectives. You know, if Omar Mateen had gone in with a hammer and a club or a sword and a knife, you know, it is not about the tool that they use. It is about the ideology that is inspiring them to conduct the actions that they continue to conduct here on our soil and all across the world.
I'll tell you another thing that disturbs me is that if they flub a ministerial task like releasing a transcript, which is just simply not that difficult, and at the same time they brag that they're being transparent, that they redact things out, thinking we're that stupid not to know when you redact things out that you're not being transparent, and when they won't give it to us straight, they sort of expect us then to accept everything. But more than that, if they can't do that ministerial task of just releasing a transcript, how can you possibly have confidence that they know how to fight terrorism?
Well, they're not showing that they have the competence to be able to deny this enemy sanctuary, to engage in an information operation to undermine their ideology. They don't understand how to attack their resourcing and man and material support. Basically what they believe is that they can come out and do this by rhetoric and do this by briefings, and that is just going to continue to embolden this enemy, not just in their actions here in America, but all across the world.
And of course, I know it's not an easy job to fight terrorism. I'm not trying to pretend that it is, but at least we should be straight with the American people. And if we're going to be transparent,
yes,
be transparent. But let me thank you, Colonel, and I want to turn now to the viewers. Now is your chance to
My
vote
pleasure.
at home on Twitter. Is it important for President Obama to use the term radical Islam? Tweet yes or no using hashtag Greta. We'll show you your live Twitter votes throughout the show.
Our Attorney General visited Orlando today and met with investigators, first responders, and victims of the June 12th terror attack. Loretta Lynch addressed reporters, but she didn't address the decision by her Justice Department to unredact the transcript of the terrorist calls to 911 just hours after a version was released without any mention of ISIS or Islam. She did say the actual recording of Omar Mateen could eventually be released as well.
We are looking to be as transparent as possible and to provide as much information as possible. Over the course of time, we certainly are open to that. I can't tell you when or in what context, but I can tell you that we are open to that.
Lynch made the rounds on the Sunday talk shows to explain why the administration was initially going to shield the public from words it didn't think they should hear. The president's former defense intelligence chief notes a pattern by the administration to what he says is censoring the truth.
This White House has a terrible track record of sending senior members of its administration out on the Sunday talk show circuit to try to baloney or talk above the United States, the American public. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And there's 3 examples of this where Susan Rice came out on Benghazi, Ben Rhodes came out on the Iranian nuclear deal. Now Attorney General Lynch has come out on this particular issue. The American people are smarter than that.
All right, Greg, I want to start with you today because you wrote a column for FoxNews.com saying that Orlando was our worst response to terrorism ever, and that we're doomed.
Well, no, because it's so depressing to me that now every single issue is a conflict. Now we're even arguing now over the 911 call. We can't even agree on the smallest elements of a brutal story. And what depresses me is that every successful country survives on the cooperation of its citizens, and the cooperation of your citizens is based on the idea that you are a citizen and that we are all Americans. But we're now in this weird place where we view terror and tragedy from our identities, that somehow everybody has to look at it differently, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, black, white, lesbian, gay, straight, whatever.
Questioning,
thank you. We now cannot agree on how to view something like terror, and it's all because of cultural relativism. We cannot agree on what's bad anymore because we ourselves don't see ourselves as any good. It's the final triumph of identity politics that we can't even, after a terror attack, just agree that it's a terror attack and then maybe talk about the gun issue. But we can't even do that anymore, and that's sad. I mean, this is the kernel of our destruction. I hate to say it.
Yeah, your column, you said that it's the most depressing thing you'll ever share, but share it anyway. So yeah, it's been getting a lot of pickup. Kimberly, do you think that Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, regrets the decision to go forward and redact those 911 calls initially?
I'm sure she does, because guess what? She got humiliated because she got walked out, paraded on the Sunday shows, very similar to Susan Rice, who pushed the video, lost any credibility that she had by putting forward a false narrative. And, this Attorney General knows better. There was no good reason except to try and provide cover for the White House to scrub that and redact those records. They should have gone forward in its entirety, because this administration has promised transparency to the American people, and 8 years later we're still waiting for it.
And now, Eric, she's saying that they actually might release the audio recording as well.
Great, as long as they don't scrub that as well. Remember when they bleeped James Rosen? So they censored Rosen because he was talking about the negotiations with Iran. Then Francois Hollande was talking about Islamic terror, and they whatever. They scrubbed his word as well. They cut his words out.
Yeah, in the transcript.
In the transcript.
And the tape, true.
And the tape, well, yeah.
Yep.
And then they had to go to the transcript to find out that they had done it in the tape. And now they're scrubbing the terrorist words. The three things that, actually there's two issues. There's a common thread among what they were doing there, again, with Iran, with Islamic terrorists and the terrorists. Again, they're afraid, they have some sort of fear of offending Muslims, so they do these things. They think it's okay. But also, two of them were State Department censorships, and the third one is Department of Justice. They all lead up to the White House. So it clearly is coming down from the White House, going to the different agencies, saying, we need to handle whatever they're doing. Maybe they're just being like, hey, we need to handle this differently when there's a Muslim thread to it. And I think that's ridiculous. I think the American people deserve transparency, honesty, and let us decide what's offensive and what's not offensive.
Juan, do you think it's a pattern, or is it just coincidence that those three things, as he's laid out there,
Oh, no, I think it's part of the Republican view of this situation, the way Greg was talking about our political polarization. I mean, from my perspective, I thought that the FBI director, the Attorney General, wanted to avoid any appearance of impropriety in an election year, so they changed their decision. But to my mind, they caved under pressure. They caved under pressure from everybody who's a conspiracy theorist, and, you know, they gave a deranged killer a megaphone to publicize his sick ideas. And I think we also run the risk, I mean, we talked about this last week, when you put out this guy's name and you make him some kind of martyr for these people, then you run the risk of copycats. But he was a liar. He said he had a bomb on him. He said there were bombs outside. He says first he's doing this to stop the bombing in Syria. Then he says, oh no, I'm with Hezbollah. Then he says, no, I'm with ISIS. But you know what? Hezbollah and ISIS, that's Shia, Sunni, they're not the same group.
He did say ISIS several times. It wasn't just once. He repeated.
named the leader.
Yeah, al-Baghdadi, and he mentioned ISIS.
Right, but I'm saying he's a confused guy who says at the same time, you know, he doesn't like homosexuals, then it's possible we learn, guess what? He may be a self-hating homosexual. I mean, it was.
But why do you bend over backwards in some bizarre positions that I certainly haven't seen before to make excuses for this guy? Like, do you want to call him crazy? Do you want to call him?
You think he's crazy?
He has like gay shame or this and that. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's like, why won't you take it for what it is? And believe me, the administration went out of their way to scrub it so that people couldn't see the record, so people couldn't see exactly what he was saying and what he was attesting.
I think it was a reasoned decision, Kimberly, to say, you know what, we do not want to give a megaphone for this guy to publicize anti-American sentiments.
But Juan, I think that if the exception to this is if he had stated specifically anti-gay rhetoric, they would not scrub that. If it was racist rhetoric, they wouldn't scrub that.
Was the KKK, would they scrub it?
Yeah, they wouldn't scrub it. So I mean, I would like to think they're consistent, but I don't think they are.
I think that they are consistent. I think that when you look exactly, this is what you were talking about, Greg.
I know.
That when you don't even want to say his name. There's law enforcement who say, we don't want these murderers.
Forget him, but do not deny the link. You can't deny the link.
But nobody denied the link. I mean, FBI director and the FBI from the very start said this is a terrorist investigation.
They didn't say Islamism. That must be said. Where you apply the politics of Sharia law or the politics of Islam, coerce it, force it onto a community. That's what this is.
In fact, this morning, Eric, I think it was Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, said that calling it Islamic radical terrorism or Islamism is just a Republican talking point. So now it looks like we're going to have to fall out on this one.
Why
I don't
is
know.
it just a Republican talking point? Why?
There are liberals who believe this.
Yeah,
right,
why don't Democrats realize that when a guy says Allahu Akbar, shoots the place up and pledges allegiance to ISIS, there's a good chance it's a jihad. It's a religious war. He's doing it for religious reasons. Well, I didn't hear, I could be wrong, but I didn't hear him say on any of these tapes or any accounts that I hate gay people.
Oh, no, but he was in a gay
club. When he's killing people, we do know there's several occasions where he said he was a jihadist for ISIS. We know that for a fact. But for some reason, liberals, and you seem to be saying, well, don't listen to what he actually said. Here's what he probably meant.
No, not at all. I'm saying listen to what he actually said, and it's inconsistent and incoherent. And at one moment, as you say, he repeatedly talks about ISIS, right? And he talks about this leader. Then he talks about Hezbollah, and you know they're different groups.
But they're all terrorists. But that's the thing. That's why I have to say, you go back, Kimberly, to the global war on terror, which was criticized by people like President Obama during the campaign, saying, I'm not going to be the guy that just does this like broad brush of terrorism against all these groups. But as we start to like take them apart, you realize they're actually all of a whole.
They're woven together, they're interlocked. The goal is jihad, okay, and establishing the caliphate. This is what they're trying to do. So when he says he's pledging allegiance to ISIS, and he acts it out and carries out, by the way, with a lot of efficiency, sadly and disgustingly, being able to execute 49 people in a place that he cased beforehand, that he was well prepared, that he in fact was someone who was very good with a weapon and able to do that kind of damage, and then had all the planning and forethought ahead of time, calling into the press, saying on 911 and telling us exactly why he was doing it and for what reason and for what group. Take him at his word and learn something or repeat the same mistakes again.
You know, yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, Obama said something, President Obama said something that's very interesting. He says that, and he's right about these recent terror attacks, they were all U.S. citizens who performed these attacks, which proves the point that we are talking about. It's not about race. It's about doctrine. These are not Arab. You know, these are Muslims. This is a doctrine. It is not race. Therefore, it is not racist or bigotry to call this what this is, to link Islamism to daily misery around the world. President Obama will not be remembered fondly for this perspective. And I make this comparison before, that the way tobacco companies denied the link between their product and cancer, the administration is denying the links between radical Islam and daily misery, the same way tobacco companies are doing. 20 years from now we'll go, do you remember President Obama denying that radical Islam was linked to the atrocities of the first decade and second decade of the 21st century?
Not good for his legacy.
You know that on the left, though, they probably look at the right and say, do you, in 20 years, they'll be so embarrassed that they don't realize that their rhetoric was causing all of these terrorist attacks.
Yes, and in 50 years we'll be embarrassed for eating meat.
And ISIS spreading and with 6 armies. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like ISIS on steroids
I'm very
thanks to
interested in what you're
Obama.
saying. By the way, earlier, I don't think that anybody, left or right, denies terror for terrorists.
Right.
I do think that people are concerned that if you, and as
Well,
Obama has said.
What is this?
What do you mean?
You're denying this is terror.
No, I'm not. What are you talking about?
You said
are you kidding? If my family, your family was in there,
So
this is a terrorist act. This is a terrorist act that happened a year ago in Charleston.
But by a crazy person who hated gays.
Right,
but you're asking
dismissing
about
the intent
Islamic
of the
jihadist
perpetrator.
extremism, and I'm saying to Greg, I agree. This is Islamic extremism, and we know President Obama has been concerned about condemning all of Islam, right? And you say, oh, Islam and is related directly to
Islamism.
What's going on. Right,
Just
and
not
I
Islam.
think it's extreme. Right, I think that's an important distinction to make. That's all I was going to say.
Isn't that the point we've been making all along?
Correct.
It's not Islam, it's radicalism.
Correct.
And
I
that's the whole
agree.
point.
I
They
agree.
can't say, they clearly can say Islam and they can clearly say radical, but they could
Not
never.
in the same sentence.
President
It does-
Obama and Hillary Clinton up until
This is
recently
what
could
happened.
never say it together.
This is what happened last week when he said, "What's the
Is
magic
this
of this
radical
phrase?"
Islamism right here? This
This is
attack?
no hierarchical structure.
Is he yes or
This
no?
is a
Oh, my
crazy
God.
person who was responding to the ideology Greg is talking about.
Thank you.
spreading.
That's what we've been saying
That's
the
what
whole
I think.
segment.
That's what I
I
think.
think
All
that
right,
we
maybe I'm
probably
confused.
actually agree a lot more, but we're like, it's like being like in 8th grade with my English teacher. We had to diagram all the sentences from the Far Side cartoons.
Yeah.
And like, you could like the longest Far Side cartoon.
Yeah, you take two people who agree with him and put them in a boxing ring, they still have to hit each other.
You just can't bring up that they were gay when you have this discussion and not expect to be saying that you're hiding the truth of radical Islam being at the root cause of this. You're basically saying because they were gay, this guy may be a gay hater and it was a hate crime.
Yeah.
And then
terrorist
he used the vehicle of
And
terrorism.
hiding
to
the
carry it out.
truth from the LGBTQ community is shameful and disrespectful to the victims and to their families. Deal with that.
All right, we gotta.
Hillary Clinton slammed Donald Trump today, saying he would be a disaster for the U.S. economy. During a speech laying out her economic plan, Clinton called the billionaire business mogul a danger to our financial future. Senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel reports from Ohio tonight on the Clinton campaign's latest line of attack on the GOP's presumptive nominee.
In battleground Ohio, Hillary Clinton attacks Donald Trump as being unfit to lead the U.S. economy.
Every day we see how reckless and careless Trump is. He's proud of it. Well, that's his choice. Except when he's asking to be our president. Then it's our choice.
Clinton also claimed Trump is reckless when it comes to his ideas on taxes.
He calls himself the king of debt. And his tax plan sure lives up to that name. And economists describe it with words like, not even in the universe of the realistic.
Trump quickly fired back on social media.
Hillary Clinton's only right about one thing. I understand debt and how to handle it. I've made a fortune with debt. But debt for this country is a disaster, and Obama has piled it on, and she's been there watching.
A new CNN ORC poll reveals 51% of those surveyed believe Trump would be better at handling the economy, holding an 8-point lead over Clinton. Yet she claimed today that Trump isn't that sharp of a businessman.
He's written a lot of books about business. They all seem to end at chapter 11.
The RNC defended Trump on that front. Quote, Donald Trump is a successful businessman who has spent his career creating thousands of jobs. Also today, a hacker who operates under the name Guccifer 2.0 has published a range of Hillary Clinton-related documents which he claims were accessed during a recent probe of the DNC's computers. It includes a HRC Defense Master Doc with defense points on the 2012 Benghazi attack, U.S. military intervention in Libya, and her use of a private email server. The DNC will neither confirm nor deny the authenticity of the documents.
Democratic sources on Capitol Hill tell me the Clinton campaign is well into the vetting process of a running mate. The sources note the names they are hearing the most are Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, California Congressman Javier Becerra, and Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown in that order. Virginia and Ohio expected to be critical battleground states, while Becerra would offer the ticket some diversity. Shannon?
All right, Mike Emanuel, we will talk about it with the panel. Thanks, Mike.
Whoa. At Wayne State University, the faculty committee just dropped its requirement in math while proposing mandatory classes in diversity. So as the science background becomes more necessary in this second machine age, they choose wrath over math. That'll help a job search. So how are you with data flow analysis? I'm not up on that, but I know the difference between bisexual and bigendered. So why not compromise and combine math and diversity into one class? Imagine this word problem. Your local supermarket has cut prices by 9%. If a pork chop costs $2.99 before the reduction, how much might this offend a Native American transgendered vegan? It's absurd, but not if you place a higher value on identity than truth. After all, math is so intolerant. Why does 2 + 2 have to equal 4 anyway? Who's to say it can't be 5? You're so numberist. So here's another word problem. When you find yourself hurtling toward the edge of a cliff, do you step on the gas or do you hit the brakes? Today it seems like we're stepping on the gas, hurtling toward an abyss. After centuries of enlightenment, we now dismiss truth, looking instead to indulge fact-free emotion. Instead of learning to multiply, we strive to divide. The great thing about math, it's the only unifying thing in existence. Sure. It's universally true no matter what culture, and it's hard on everyone. Maybe that's why they're replacing it with diversity training. Anyone can do that, which must comfort the faculty.
I've raised a lot of money, but you also have to have some help from the party. We have a party that, I mean, I'm having more difficulty, frankly, with some of the people in the party than I have with the Democrats.
Let's bring in our panel today to talk about some of these fundraising numbers for Donald Trump. We've got Tucker Carlson, host of Fox & Friends Weekend, Kirsten Powers, USA Today columnist, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Welcome to you all. All right, let's talk about these numbers a little bit, because when we look at cash on hand, going into June, Donald Trump is outpaced by Hillary Clinton by almost 40 times what he has on hand. Tucker, that doesn't sound good.
It's a surprising number. It's a shocking number, honestly, and it doesn't reflect well on the Trump campaign. No denying that. On the other hand, just a couple points. One, money does not determine the outcome of elections necessarily, as Mitt Romney proved, as a lot of people proved in this last primary season. Two, this is evidence, among other things, that the GOP donor class isn't giving. So presumably they think they're going to do better with Hillary. They won't. And the third obvious point that the Trump people ought to be exploiting is this shows that Hillary Clinton has a PhD in sucking up to rich people. This was the rationale behind his primary campaign, as you remember. I'm not beholden to moneyed interest. That was a resonant theme, and he ought to revive it.
Kirsten, he has talked a lot about the fact that he is going to do things on his own. As Tucker said, I mean, I'm self-funding. I'm not beholden to anybody. But now, if you're competing against somebody who has tens of millions of more dollars, and with super PACs factored in that are going to be assisting Mrs. Clinton as well, his, again, on his side, lesser than what she's got going. How does he combat that, or is it sort of game over for him, at least when it comes to relying on money to get your message out?
Look, I'm certainly not going to count Trump out or say game over for him. I think we've all learned that lesson. But when you look at a primary campaign versus a general election campaign, you're talking about a very different situation. In the primary campaign, he needed to run against a large field of people and distinguish himself enough to get the majority out of 17, and then it decreased. But the point is he needed to fire up the base. Now he's going to have to really convince a wide swath of people, including people who wouldn't normally vote for him, that they need to vote for him. And he's also going to be under attack from Hillary, as we saw in the economic speech, which we're going to talk about later. He's going to get the Bain treatment, exactly what happened to Mitt Romney, times 1,000. So he's going to be caricatured, and he's going to need to be able to get his message out. And the question is free media going to be enough?
All right, so let's look historically on where we were with former GOP candidates at this time as far as fundraising. When you look back at Romney in May of 2012, he had $23.4 million raised, $17 million on hand. McCain, in that same neighborhood as far as amount raised, $21.5 million back in 2008, but $31 million on hand. Now, Charles, he's done things differently than either of those candidates, and he's been successful with that so far.
Well, what tends to discount that graph, those numbers, is the fact that McCain and Romney lost. So it is hardly, something that guarantees Trump's losing. It isn't that much of a negative. He got $2 billion worth of free media. He's the master of that. Now, it could be that after 9 months or a year now of being on the air every day, all the time, on all cable networks, that the message is there, already out there, and it's not going to do very much good. In fact, he tends now, with all of these appearances, to get himself in trouble, as he has over the last month or so, with his off-the-cuff pronouncements. But it's in no way determinative. The one thing that is interesting and paradoxical, and that would be a problem for any other ordinary candidate, is that he did campaign very strongly and very aggressively against his competitors in the primaries for being owned lock, stock, and barrel by the people they took money from. And here he is going around with cap in hand, cup in hand, trying to raise money from donors and complaining that he's not getting enough. So you got to ask him. With him, he seems to discard an idea from here to there, but it's a complete contradiction. Won't he be owned by them if he gets their money? And how does he explain the flip-flop?
Well, and Tucker, today there are a number of GOP pundits and insiders who, and some of them went on the record, I mean, they're named, saying they're very concerned because he doesn't like going around asking for money. He doesn't want to spend time on the phone or in person with these donors. He is used to being the one who's being wooed and not the other way around.
Probably a totally fair criticism. I mean, it should be in part discounted because that's what we do here in Washington, is we make our living from the money that candidates raise. I mean, that's our business. And so people have a vested interest, of course, in wanting to see as much paid television advertising, for example, as they possibly can. But now is the time for Trump, in a judo move, to flip it around and say Hillary Clinton is the candidate of Wall Street. She's taking more money, of course, from Wall Street, I think, than any candidate ever. And to call for her, as Bernie Sanders did, to release the transcripts of her speeches to Wall Street banks. Well, why wouldn't he take this opportunity to flip it around? He's got, these numbers are impossible to explain. So time to go on the offense. I would.
And it was the one thing that Bernie brought up in the debates, too.
It's a guy who won't release his tax form.
Well, that's the standard of consistency to which he is not held.
He's going to demand openness, transparency. For her speeches were probably irrelevant. Everybody knows there's nothing in there. While he's withholding the one thing that every candidate for every party has done for 40 years. It's not a very strong argument.
Well, it's a brazen argument. I will give you that. But
well,
what else do you say? 40-1? I mean, you have to have a response to it, and it can't just be Paul Singer doesn't like me.
Well, again, he's done things his own way, and thus far has been very successful doing them their own way. We'll see. Now, today he did go and meet with scores of evangelical leaders, conservative Christian groups, Catholics as well, to try to allay their fears that they have about him. Here is a little bit of what Tony Perkins said at the Family Research Council after that meeting.
Donald Trump today came and had a conversation. Now, we don't agree on everything. But one thing he did, he acknowledged the concerns that evangelicals have, and he affirmed those concerns. And he said it won't happen when I'm president.
Kirsten, folks inside the meeting said they mainly talked about things like Planned Parenthood, defunding that, abortion issues, but also they said the topic that came up again and again and that he committed to was defending religious liberty, not just of Christians, but including Christians, Muslims, whomever in this country.
Right, yeah, and apparently he got a standing ovation as well, which some of the other things that he talked about was he questioned Hillary Clinton's religion, and which is very similar to what he was doing with President Obama, and in fact invoked President Obama, saying, well, at least with President Obama we were on our guard, but with Hillary Clinton we're not. So he seems to be going down this path again of, you know, questioning religions. He said that we don't know anything about Hillary Clinton's religion, which is an absolute falsehood. It's just not true. There's quite a bit known about it, and you know, he, in front of this religious group, that this is where he decides to go. He also said some theologically questionable things, like you don't only need to pray for leaders that you like. You don't need to pray for other people, just pray for me because I'm going to protect religious freedom. So, you know, this is kind of the old guard of it's very much the religious right, the old guard of the religious right, and I think that they are going to go with Trump. They have nowhere else to go, so it's not surprising. But, you know, there are a lot of evangelical leaders that don't like Trump, like Russell Moore,
and a number of them,
Robbie George refused to go to this meeting.
And there are a number of them who stopped way far short of an endorsement today, but did go on to say, given our options, you know, he's the best option we think we have on issues like abortion, like religious freedom. But Charles, I didn't hear a lot of ringing endorsements coming out of the meeting.
Well, it's hardly a ringing endorsement when Perkins says he said it won't happen when I'm president. What does the "it" refer to?
I think it meant these attacks on religious liberty is what Perkins had been talking about.
I thought he was saying that the things that Trump had done that might have offended evangelicals would not happen when he's in the White House, which is odd because when you're running for president, you tend to accommodate your audiences. Once you're in office, you can do anything you want, and the restraints are off. So it's an odd argument that you're going to be more restrained and disciplined after you've won the prize. But I do think his appeal has always been, and the fact that he won the evangelical vote remarkably and quite overwhelmingly against a guy like Ted Cruz, I think everybody understands what he was saying. I'm not one of you. I acknowledge that. I say 2 Corinthians, I'm not exactly well versed in the Bible, but
pun intended.
I will protect you. I'm going to be the centurion standing outside the cathedral gates, protecting you against the barbarians abroad and the barbarians, the secularists at home. I'll protect you. And he said that explicitly, and that's a pretty powerful argument.
And for many of them today, they said that's simply what they needed to hear.